Hello everyone, I'm Brazen Eagle and thank you for joining me here. So today, we are going to continue another reading from Sir John Glubb's The Fate of Empires and the Search for Survival. So, let us resume at number 13, The Age of Commerce. So let us now, however, return to the life story of our typical empire. We have already considered the Age of Outburst, when a little regarded people suddenly bursts onto the world stage with a wild courage and energy. Let us call it the Age of the Pioneers. Then we saw that these new conquerors acquired the sophisticated weapons of the old empires and adopted their regular systems of military organization and training. A great period of military expansion ensued, which we may call the Age of Conquests. The conquests resulted in the acquisition of vast territories under a single government, thereby automatically giving rise to commercial prosperity. We may call this the Age of Commerce. The Age of Conquests, of course, overlaps the Age of Commerce. The proud military tradition still holds sway, and the great armies guard the frontiers, but gradually the desire to make money seems to gain hold of the public. During the military period, glory and honor were the principal objects of ambition. To the merchant, such ideas are but empty words, which add nothing to the bank balance. Number 14, Art and Luxury. The wealth which seems almost without effort to pour into the country enables the commercial classes to grow immensely rich. How to spend all this money becomes a problem to the wealthy business community. Art, architecture, and luxury find rich patrons. Splendid municipal buildings and wide streets lend dignity and beauty to the wealthy areas of great cities. The rich merchants build themselves palaces, and money is invested in communications, highways, bridges, railways, or hotels according to the varied patterns of the ages. The first half of the Age of Commerce appears to be peculiarly splendid. The ancient virtues of courage, patriotism, and devotion to duty are still in evidence. The nation is proud, united, and full of self-confidence. Boys are still required, first of all, to be manly, to ride, to shoot straight, and to tell the truth. It is remarkable what emphasis is placed at this stage on the manly virtue of truthfulness, for lying is cowardice, the fear of facing up to the situation. Boys' schools are intentionally rough. Frugal eating, hard living, breaking the ice to have a bath, and similar customs are aimed at producing a strong, hardy, and fearless breed of men. Duty is the word constantly drummed into the heads of young people. The Age of Commerce is also marked by great enterprise in the exploration for new forms of wealth. Daring initiative is shown in the search for profitable enterprises in far corners of the earth, perpetuating to some degree the adventurous courage of the Age of Conquests. Now, number 15, the Age of Affluence. There does not appear to be any doubt that money is the agent which causes the decline of the strong, brave, and self-confident people. The decline in courage, enterprise, and a sense of duty is, however, it's gradual. The first direction in which wealth injures the nation is a moral one. Money replaces honor and adventure as the objective of the best young men. Moreover, men do not normally seek to make money for their country or their community, but for themselves, gradually and almost imperceptibly. The Age of Affluence silences the voice of duty. The object of the young and the ambitious is no longer fame, honor, or service, but cash. Education undergoes the same gradual transformation. No longer do schools aim at producing brave patriots ready to serve their country. Parents and students alike seek the educational qualifications which will command the highest salaries. The Arab moralist Ghazali complains in these very same words of the lowering of objectives in the declining Arab world of his time. Students, he says, no longer attend college to acquire learning and virtue, but to obtain those qualifications which will enable them to grow rich. The same situation is everywhere evident among us in the West today. It's funny how history repeats itself. So now time for number 16, High Noon. That which we may call the high noon of the nation covers the period of transition from the age of conquests to the age of affluence, the age of Augustus in Rome, that of Harun al-Rashid in Baghdad, of Suleiman the Magnificent in the Ottoman Empire or the Queen Victoria in Britain. Perhaps we might even add the age of Woodrow Wilson in the United States. All these periods reveal the same characteristics. The immense wealth accumulated in the nation dazzles the onlookers. Enough of the ancient virtues of courage, energy, and patriotism survive to enable the state successfully to defend its frontiers. But beneath the surface, greed for money is gradually replacing duty and public service. Indeed, the change might be summarized as being from service to selfishness. Number 17, defensiveness. Another outward change which invariably marks the transition from the age of conquests to the age of affluence is the spread of defensiveness. The nation, immensely rich, is no longer interested in glory or duty, but is only anxious to retain its wealth and its luxury. It is a period of defensiveness, from the Great Wall of China to Hadrian's Wall on the Scottish border to the Maginot Line in France in 1939. Money being in better supply than courage, subsidies instead of weapons are employed to buy off enemies. To justify this departure from ancient tradition, the human mind easily devises its own justification. Military readiness or aggressiveness is denounced as primitive and immoral. Civilized peoples are too proud to fight. The conquest of one nation by another is declared to be immoral. Empires are wicked. This intellectual device enables us to suppress our feeling of inferiority when we read of the heroism of our ancestors and then ruefully contemplate our position today. It is not that we are afraid to fight, we say, but we should consider it immoral. This even enables us to assume an attitude of moral superiority. Sounds somewhat similar to today's world. The weakness of pacifism is that there are always, and will always still be many peoples in the world who are aggressive. Nations who proclaim themselves unwilling to fight are liable to be conquered by peoples in the stage of militarism, perhaps even to see themselves incorporated into some new empire with the status of mere provinces or colonies. When to be prepared to use force and when to give away is a perpetual human problem which can only be solved, as best we can, in each successive situation as it arises. In fact, however, history seems to indicate that great nations do not normally disarm from motives of conscience, but owing to the weakening of a sense of duty in the citizens, and the increase in selfishness and the desire for wealth and ease. So, I'm going to leave that reading right there. I will go over the Age of Intellect in the next video because it is extremely important to go over it by itself, and by doing that, it is extremely revealing to see how the United States and, of course, Western civilization is decaying. Now, anyways, let's go back to the Age of Commerce under point 13. But before I begin, though, I do want to say that while Sir John Glubb talks about certain ages and stages of a country's or even an empire's life, all these ages can overlap and are most likely influential on each other. So, in my opinion, I would say that, at least in the United States, the Age of Commerce for us began with the Gilded Age, which, of course, ran from the 1870s to about 1900, even maybe a little bit beyond 1900 into the 1910s, maybe even to the 1920s, or at least for the Age of Commerce for us. I would say, however, that you could make a good argument that our Age of Commerce ended or persisted until the end of World War II or even the Korean War. Now, if you don't know, according, of course, to Wikipedia here, the Gilded Age was an era of rapid economic growth, especially in the North and the West. As American wages grew much higher than those in Europe, especially for skilled workers, the period saw an influx of millions of European immigrants. The rapid expansion of industrialization led to a real wage growth of 60% between 1860 and 1890 and spread across the ever-increasing labor force. And of course it goes over how much more money was made during this time. However, though, the Gilded Age was also an era of abject poverty and inequality as millions of immigrants, many from impoverished regions, poured into the U.S., and the high concentration of wealth became more and more visible and contentious. Now, Sir John Glubb goes on and states that the very wealthy, during this age of commerce, as well of the next age as well, the very wealthy begin to prop up and exchange money for things such as art and types of art, for types of architecture and other forms of prestige. For example, in the United States, during the Gilded Age and a little bit afterwards, we had American businessmen do exactly this. And of course, for example, I am referring to individuals such as Andrew Carnegie, who financed, of course, the building of the Carnegie Hall in New York, and another businessman named John D. Rockefeller, who founded the University of Chicago and the American Baptist Foreign Mission Society. They, through their immense wealth, spent their money, some of their money, on art, architecture, and prestige. Everything they did after they made their millions or even billions, they wanted to enhance their own prestige and maybe help the common folk, but mostly enhance their own prestige. But, of course, Sir John Glubb goes on and elaborates that within this age of commerce, with art and luxury, courage, patriotism, and devotion to duty are, of course, still present in the day-to-day. Boys and girls, but especially boys, still have their normal roles in society. And, of course, for boys, it is their duty to be the nation's guardian and, of course, to have a sense of duty to protect your nation. But now comes the age of affluence. Sir John Glubb assumes that it is money that causes the gradual decline of a once great nation. According to him, money corrupts honor and adventure. Men seek to make money for themselves instead of creating a society that others can look up to. The pursuit of the eternal dollar replaces duty. Furthermore, education is now seen as a method of how to obtain the highest salary for the individual. Now, this is not necessarily a bad thing, but money corrupts. Sir John Glubb even brings up the 1,000-year-old Arab moralist Ghazali, in which that man complained that students during his time were in education purely for money instead of adventure or even virtue. That was almost 1,000 years ago. Like I said, history is repeating itself. Now, of course, Sir John Glubb goes on to the 16th point by stating that there is a transition period called high noon. Because of the awe of the wealth a nation or an empire has created, the pursuit of money becomes rampant. Being a patriot and having courage for adventure is seen as less necessary and perhaps even outdated. Money is the end-all, be-all for the nation. And of course, once we're past high noon, we enter the stage of defensiveness. Now, like what Sir John Glubb has given us in terms of examples, the nation in question focuses on defending and retaining its wealth. Money can buy off potential enemies. I guess technically in the United States, we give other nations money. While it's not a large part of our budget, we do try to support other nations in forms of wealth and information, which you can make that as a potential comparison to. But anyways, the next part, however, is very, very important in this defensive paragraph, or this defensiveness section, because the intellectual part of it, before we actually get to the age of intellect, is rampant throughout our current society. Military readiness, or aggressiveness, is seen as primitive and immoral. Supposed civilized people do not fight, for that is for the barbarians. It is barbaric to fight. Conquesting others is unbecoming of a civilized nation, supposedly. Sir John Glubb elaborates, as he states, that people who state such words are inferior people who are trying to cover their own weaknesses by saying that empires are evil and should not be the goal of any good civilization. People will assume a moral superiority because they have nothing else to lean on. We see this today. Some individuals, especially politicians, want to appear to be more moral than us average citizens by talking big and by talking how great and cultured those politicians are. Many politicians, not all, but many politicians give off the aura that they are morally or even culturally better than the rest of us, of which they are not. But by assuming a position of pacifism, people will be conquered by those who are ambitious enough. Just because you think you're a pacifist doesn't mean that everyone else is. Human history is a fight for survival. It's in our nature. Now, lastly, Sir John Glubb brings up that nations do not disarm due to the motives of conscience, but because of the decline of the sense of duty in its citizens. The citizens become more and more selfish, which isn't inherently bad, but focus almost entirely on the pursuit for the eternal dollar and comfort, or in his case, ease. This last part is easy to overlook. That's why I kind of stopped and made a big point out of it. Sir John Glubb notes that the decaying nation's citizens want to have a life full of ease and wealth instead of pursuing new ideas and expansion. Now, unlike the Age of Commerce, I haven't spoken about the end periods of the Age of Affluence, or technically the High Noon Transition period, or even the Defensiveness period either. I would reckon, though, that the Age of Affluence is still with us. Almost everyone, at least everyone I know, pretty much goes to school because they are forced to, and of course, many people, especially young people, pursue higher education for the chance to have a better salary and thus a better life. They're not interested in the adventure in it, they're just interested in making money. We are still in the Age of Affluence. Sir John Glubb brings up that the High Noon Transition period, at least for the United States, was potentially during the presidency of Woodrow Wilson 100 years ago. He was president from 1913 until 1921. For the Age of Defensiveness, however, we are still currently in it. Yes, we fight meaningless foreign wars, still in 2019. But many Americans see war as worthless or unnecessary or even outdated. There are many Americans who would rather lay down and die than fight a foe. Many Americans would claim to be morally superior instead of conquesting others, if needed. Most Americans are stricken with the belief, unfortunately, that everyone is equal. The citizenry has been at least weakened through social indoctrination. The duty of the citizenry is mostly gone, or at least partially gone, I would say. But now I ask you, do you see any similarities between what Sir John Glubb has brought up and our modern day? Have I overlooked something that should be brought up? Where do you see us in our decline? Because no nation stagnates. It's either you go up or you go down. And if you technically stagnate, then you are probably going down. But anyways, leave your comments below. Thank you very much for watching. I'm Brazen Eagle, and I hope you have a great day.